You're listening to the Heartland Newsfeed Radio Network, broadcasting live 24/7 at heartlandnewsfeed.com.
Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by the Free State Project, the FSP. If you're not familiar with the Free State Project, it is a historic mass migration of more than 20,000 people who have pledged to move to New Hampshire for liberty. New Hampshire residents can also join the FSP, and all of you guys can join at fsp.org/join. I've met a bunch of the Free Staters, the people in the Free State Project, and there's some really cool people there. If you're interested in it, I highly recommend you looking into it, getting some more information. If you want to live in a place where people take responsibility for their own actions and lives, their dealings with others, where community is genuine and voluntary, where your rights are fully respected, provided only that you equally respect the rights of others, well, that's what the Free Staters are all about. That's what the Free State Project is all about. If you want to join, go to fsp.org/join. I think it's a really cool idea. There's more than 24,000 people who have already pledged to move up to New Hampshire. Once again, go to fsp.org/join. All right, let's start the show.
You're listening to Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network.
How can you be the freest country in the world when you lock more of your own people in cages than any other country in the world? The lesson of 9/11 should have been to never fund another young rebel group in this part of the world again. America started as the smallest government in history, and it's become the biggest government in world history. At the end of the day, it's all about freedom.
Here's your host, Dane Smith.
Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am the most consistent Christian conservative you know, Dave Smith. I am joined by Robby the Fire Bernstein. And we hope you're all having a wonderful day. Just a wonderful, wonderful day. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing swell, real good.
May I call you Robert?
I would love it if you call me Robert.
I just watched an entire documentary on R. Kelly, and all of the it's a pretty famous documentary that's out there. It's like an 8-part docu-series, and spoiler, he's not having a good week. And spoiler, I don't think he's a good dude. But all the people who know him call him Robert, and the whole time they're just calling him Robert Kelly. And they're just like, Robert Kelly raped me, and Robert Kelly did this. And it's weird when you know a Robert Kelly from the comedy world, who is in many ways the exact opposite of R. Kelly. Can't sing for shit. Anyway, R. Kelly looks like he's going down. The latest victim of the Me Too moment. And it looks like it was almost just like there were so many people who went down in this Me Too thing that they were almost like, I mean, I guess R. Kelly has been pissing on 15-year-old black chicks for the last 20 years. We should probably do something about that. But anyway, I don't think he's a good guy.
Apparently, it sounds like the video evidence that they got is like cartoonishly guilty, where he just keeps going like, "Your 14-year-old pussy's so good," and she's like, "You know, you like that 14-year-old pussy."
Dude,
like
it's hilarious. It's everything that you're saying.
It's just the best evidence in the history.
Her age on video, and she tells him his age on the video, and then they have at one point someone from another room calls to him and calls out his name.
Oh,
so there's like someone in the room, they're like, hey, R. Kelly, who made the hit song, I Believe I Can Fly. Do we got any more grape drink? And he's like,
shut up, I'm trying to fuck this 14-year-old in here.
So bad. But he got off on court the last time. It really is so sad and fucked up. But he got off on court the last time because, and this is what's so, oh, God, it really makes your skin crawl. But this fucking girl is just like, no, that wasn't me on the tape. Because it's like this fucking tape. I mean, this is back like when the first tape was coming out, I think around 2002, 2003.
Yeah, the camcorder quality just wasn't what it used to be.
Well, first off, the quality is not great, but also it was like, this was like before the sex tape thing. So it was like just so mortifying. Not that it still wouldn't be, but it was so mortifying to her that her sex tape was out there, and also getting pissed on by an old man.
But little did she know, she could have done the Kardashian route. That chick could be rich and famous right now.
Well, it took a pioneer like Kim Kardashian to come out and prove that. So this is before that. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's easy to say in hindsight, sure. But at the time, no one knew you could blow up.
Does Robert Kelly have a piece like Ray J?
I don't know.
That's
I don't know if I've actually seen the sex tape. I think I may have way back when, but I don't know. I haven't looked at it. I can't. That's too much for me, at least right now. Maybe if we pull it up on Legion of Skanks, I'll have to do it. But we can't do that because that is child porn. I'm like, I'd be afraid to Google that now. There's just something about that you're like, yeah, no, I can't watch an underage girl get peed on. That's not okay. But she basically denied it was her, and then a bunch of her family denied it was her because they didn't want her to be embarrassed.
Right.
And I think R. Kelly might have paid the family off too. Yeah, so he got let off. But now, supposedly, they say his bail was just set and he's out. But I think his trial begins in like May or something like that. But so they say, I believe they have 2 other tapes, and they've just got he's been keeping like a house full of chicks. It's really crazy. Like, they're not allowed to like leave the room unless they ask him. They can't eat or go to the bathroom unless they ask him first, and they have to call him daddy, and they can't talk to anyone except R. Kelly. It's real crazy. Yeah. Allegedly. I guess I don't know if any of this is true, but I saw a documentary that was pretty convincing.
I said that to you before. I'm bringing it up. I hate that things like this are part of the Me Too movement. This is criminal. It should never have happened.
Oh, yeah.
This is not the kind of thing that we should need a cultural movement about sexual harassment in a workplace. Like, these are 2 different things. This is criminal activity.
Yes, it's not sexual harassment in the workplace. It's peeing on 15-year-olds.
Yeah, we don't need
a different thing.
There doesn't need to be a cultural movement about male power dynamics that someone like R. Kelly, these are 2 different things. This is a guy who did criminal activities that's disgusting, and he should have been in 20 years ago. He should have been in jail, or however long ago that is the fault of our criminal justice system.
Absolutely,
that people like this can get away with crimes, and that apparently when the culture shifts, like, I don't understand why there's a change now that suddenly he's being busted for it.
I agree with you on that, but the major flaw in the Me Too moment. Well, first off, it's a moment that's characterized by a hashtag. So how nuanced do you expect it to be? But there is no nuance. That's the problem. Is that everything, and then it's like kind of weird to me where like what gets judged as worse than the other things. To me, targeting children is a whole different fucking level. Like, I think that what R. Kelly did is far worse than what Chris Brown did. And Chris Brown straight up beat the shit out of his chick, like hospitalized her, like fucking. But to me, even a violent assault of a grown woman who's, an adult, has money, has lawyers, has the phone number of the police, you know what I mean? Like, and targeting children is a drastically different thing. But then, of course, what Chris Brown did is way worse than what fucking 99% of the guys caught up in this Me Too shit have done. And yet there doesn't seem to be any, like, I don't know. From what I understand, Chris Brown still performs and shit like that, and it's not like a whole thing. Yet, it's a weird thing when you'll see, like, my buddy Owen Benjamin gets venues pulled from him more often than Chris Brown or R. Kelly do.
Right.
Like, I think R. Kelly actually has had some venues pulled from him, but still, it's like, really, like, these are all the same things. Like, Owen Benjamin doesn't think we landed on the moon. R. Kelly pisses on children. I don't think those are exactly the same, in my warped moral perspective.
I'm just happy Avenanti can finally get the rebound case he needed after
Jesus, what a piece of
after
shit.
botching the last Stormy Daniels, after ending up in a situation where Stormy Daniels owes Trump money. At least he can get his cred back amongst what the fuck is up with that guy that he likes to be in all these creep cases?
Oh, yeah, he's a creepy porn lawyer, as Tucker Carlson calls him. Did you see when he was on Tucker Carlson's show? And Tucker Carlson calls him creepy porn lawyer all the time. And then it's a real dick move. But Tucker Carlson had him on his show and he was interviewing him, and the ticker at the bottom
said creepy
porn lawyer. Oh, God, it was fucking, what a dick move, but it was pretty hilarious. But no, that guy is the caricature of the sleazebag lawyer, but forget the Stormy Daniels thing. The one he did with Kavanaugh was even worse, where he represented that woman who claimed that Kavanaugh and a bunch of people ritualistically
the one that just got thrown out, right?
And she just took it back eventually. Like, she was like, oh yeah, I was full of shit that whole time. Literally, none of that happened. None of that is real at all. But that's a crazy thing to do, to just be able to like float out these accusations, these horrific accusations against people, and then just go, oops, no, my bad. And of course, there's always some, it's like the way it works now in the mainstream media is you have these tiers of like the bullshit fake news. So at the top tier is like, the New York Times and the Washington Post. Then underneath that is like CNN and MSNBC. Like they'll get away with a little bit more bullshit on the TV than those guys will. Like they'll all have bullshit news, but the New York Times at least typically will protect themselves, whereas you'll look at like a CNN clip and it'll just be like, dude, this is just complete lies and phoniness. And then underneath that, there's like the BuzzFeed type, like we'll print anything, basically. We'll print anything that you fucking have. And so what'll happen is the BuzzFeed, Daily Beast type, those type of news organizations, they'll just run with the story that Kavanaugh was ritualistically gang raping people. Then MSNBC, CNN will go, well, it's been reported that blah, blah, blah. And then so they're not really running with it, but they're just like, well, but it has been reported in BuzzFeed. And then the New York Times will be like one step removed from that. But they're all basically reporting on what the trash, like the most fake of the fake news reports. And so it just gets all around to the point that Kavanaugh was actually questioned about it in his Supreme Court confirmation hearings. And he was like, wait, what? You're asking me about that one? Like this? Really, guys? Really? You think somewhere at a fucking college, like, frat party, there were just ritualistic gang rapes going on every week? Every week. And you can't find one other person to come forward and talk about it? You can't find anyone to corroborate that story. That seems a little bit far-fetched for me. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all real. Yeah, no, Avenatti, he's a real fucking piece of shit. He's a real character, that guy. All of a sudden I want to use 1930s insults. He's a real character, this guy.
But he's turning it all around. Now he's taking down R. Kelly. And
we'll see. He hasn't brought him down yet. But to what you were saying before, where you're like, there is like an obvious difference to any sane person between, an inappropriate sexual, advance and a criminal activity, like obviously those are a big difference, but it's, to me, I also think, see, there's a weird, like, sometimes it's hard to go like, well, how do you judge one thing and how much worse it is than another? So just for example, right? Dane Cook, who's like 46, something like that.
Was he also into pissing on chicks?
No, I don't. Not that I know
that
of.
about
I
him.
cannot confirm or deny. But he's got a 20-year-old girlfriend who he's been dating for 2 years. So he started dating her when he's like 44, and she's 18. Now, okay, I understand. We've drawn an arbitrary legal line. And I don't mean arbitrary in a critical sense. You got to draw the line somewhere, right?
Right.
Where exactly should it be drawn? I don't know, but 18, 17 in some states. So it's not illegal. But is just morally speaking, it's like, okay, so if she was 16, we're all saying that he should go to jail. But if she's 18, then what? Okay, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the answer is. But this is what I will say, okay?
Yeah.
I think what Dane Cook did is way worse than what Louis C.K. did. Louis C.K. went up to other adult women and propositioned them and asked them, hey, is it okay if I jerk off? The worst thing Louis did was he one time on the set at work went up to a chick who worked there and asked if he could masturbate in front of her, and she said no, which is that's a tough no to get. Like if you ask a question that weird, you really better get a yes. When you get a no, and then he just went, oh, sorry, I have problems. I don't know what to tell you. I have problems. So you could definitely say that's like workplace sexual harassment or something along those lines. But that's the worst thing he did, was he propositioned another adult woman. She said no, so he respected that, didn't do anything. Like, I don't know, dude. Being a fucking 45-year-old dude going after an 18-year-old and fucking an 18-year-old. to me is worse than that. That's my own moral compass. I'm not saying anyone should go to jail over it, but it's just like, that to me is worse. Yet that kind of gets left off, and Dane Cook stole jokes from Louis. So, I mean, you got to throw that into the whole equation as well.
I got a different criteria on that
Louis,
one.
all original material. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not hanging out with anyone under 21. Even 21 is a little weird at this point. Like, they gotta seem a little mature. Otherwise, to me, it's just kind of off-putting. But if a kid can't drink, I can't hang out with you. Then I'm just being a creep, because I'm not going to not drink, and I don't want to serve you alcohol. So this isn't going to work. But Dane,
I'm with you.
I don't think Dane, I believe, doesn't drink. So it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like, so then that 21-year-old standard drops. And then in his case, I think he's rich enough that this is probably a win for that 18-year-old in terms of lifestyle. So God bless. I'm not saying it's not a little creepy, but if she's actually married to the guy, that's the biggest payday she could possibly get out of a husband.
Well, I
so
believe
go
they're
for it.
not married, and I also would prefer if you didn't bring God into these discussions.
What, you
Very
mean with the holy union of marriage?
Yes.
Well, God bless.
No, you said God bless.
Oh,
God does not bless.
No, he does. That's why this dynamic.
I'm still new to this. I don't know how
this dynamic is old as time. Rich old dude, hot young
you're right.
chick.
You're right.
Everyone wins.
I agree. To me personally, my own personal sensibilities, I find it like, I just think, for me, I think that's worse than what Louis did. That's my own personal thing. I think there is a dynamic going on there that you're like, when you're this chick's father's age, and you're fucking.
How weird is that when you gotta, like, if you're really dating and then you gotta go, like, at some point you gotta be a human being and go see their family, and you're really the same age as the dad, because you just want to high five the guy, like, hey, look at this 18. Oh, right, that's your 18-year-old.
Oh. Bro, why don't you high-five me back? Knuckle pound me, bro. All right, let's take a second and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is People's Choice Beef Jerky, LA's original small batch beef jerky. We were just having some of that small batch. Ooh, it is tasty. Everybody here at Gas Digital has been enjoying it. You know, it's a great company. They're a family business from California. They've been making quality jerky for over 85 years. Unlike mass-produced beef jerky, People's Choice Beef Jerky is marinated, sliced, and cooked by hand, and you can really taste the difference. I highly recommend that you go pick some up. You will enjoy it. You can taste the difference when it's cooked by hand. Like I said, we're all snacking on it here at Gas Digital. It's a healthy snack, high in protein. You can keep it at your desk and work. You can have it as a meal, as a snack. I know a lot of people's New Year's resolution was to eat healthy, lose weight, all that good stuff. This is great for that. So anyway, go to peopleschoicebeefjerky.com, and if you use the promo code POTP15, you're going to get 15% off. peopleschoicebeefjerky.com. Yeah, anyway, it's a weird, the whole thing is like, it's just hard. It's hard to have like an objective standard of what is okay and what isn't okay. But to me, again, like I said with the Louis thing.
Also, how hot is the Dane Cook 18-year-old? Because that does kind of change it. At some point, if they're hot, you're like, all right, like you shouldn't, but all right.
Oh yeah, no, Dane Cook's not fucking a gross 18-year-old.
No, but like she could be like cute, and then you're like, come on, like this isn't work. But like,
I think she's gonna pass her standard.
I'm
not sure, but I'm pretty.
There's
sure
also a
okay
difference. We all understand there's a difference between like girl next door cute, in which case they're like, hey, you're corrupting this 18-year-old, and then there's just smoke show. They're like, oh, she's not really 18. It's a different.
No, look, I get where you're coming from. I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, if we're gonna have this Me Too thing, and then here's the thing, right? And this is what's hard to. It's hard exactly to explain, but I feel like, so there are points in the R. Kelly documentary where they're talking about different girls that he like basically. I don't even know how to put it. Like, he doesn't kidnap them, but he kind of abducts them in this weird, like, non-coercive, violent way. But he like convinces them to come live with him, and then they basically are never heard from again. But there'll be these ones where they're like, this chick met R. Kelly at age 17, and you're like, oh, dude, that's fucked up. But then there'll be the ones where like, this chick met R. Kelly at 15, and then I'm like, someone should shoot you in your head. Now I know that's only a 2-year difference, and the law may not even recognize them as different, but there is something like, right, don't you get where it's like, there's something like, to the type of monster you are, that you're a 40-year-old who will fuck a 17-year-old? Then there's a way worse monster that'll fuck a 15-year-old, and like a 12-year-old is like, you might need to be tortured and then killed. There's not that many, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's something just a few years, particularly at that age, where it makes all the difference in the world. And then there's like these things where it's like, oh, this chick met him at 19 or this chick met him at 20. And you're kind of like, all right, well, I mean, he's still a creep, but like you got to know better at that point. I don't know. Like at some point you got to be an adult that's responsible for yourself. And it's like, yeah, you just wanted to fuck a rich, famous guy and you should leave. You know, you have that ability. So leave. But anyway, I don't know. That's where
maybe you got to get them real young to convince them that peeing as a part of sex is normal.
You go, no, this is what we do.
This is what sex was always about.
You want to make a baby or not? That's how this works. Man, they don't have enough sex ed in those inner city public schools, do they? The other thing about the documentary, I mentioned this to you briefly before, but it's unbelievable because it's all like these like.
How many parts? I'm sorry, you said this was 5 parts.
I think it's like 6 or 7.
Can't they cover that that just sounds like a world of depression.
Turns out there's that many chicks.
But it just seems like I get it. Like, can't you just give me the overall story? Maybe one dark montage of all you actually sat through 5 like. It was riveting. You're like, oh, I got to see the next.
It was pretty good. Yeah.
It sounds terrible.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. Yeah, I sunk some serious time into this. Yeah.
I don't like dwelling on this shit.
Yeah, typically I don't really either, but this one got me. It was well produced, and there's it was riveting enough that it got me into it. But there's all these like activists who are commenting in the documentary, and it's a lot of like the Me Too. It's that chick who invented the hashtag Me Too, who, let's just say the camera can't zoom out far enough for you to be able to listen to what this woman is saying. But she, and they're all kind of like all these activists and the person it's like a bunch of people who invented hashtags, that's the world we live in now. These are people who we need
Inventors.
to talk to. So someone invented the hashtag mute R. Kelly. Someone invented the hashtag Me Too. And it's like they're okay. They never actually come out and say this is white people's fault. But it's basically implied throughout the thing where they're like, they don't say white people, but they say like society a lot. And they'll be like, well, the problem is that society doesn't value black girls. And that's why no one cares that R. Kelly was doing this. Or, society, they'll say a lot, if they were white girls, this would have been over a long time ago. But they're black girls, so blah, blah. And then they'll say, well, society has these stereotypes of what black girls are. And then we internalize that. And that's why we don't have the self-esteem to leave. And it's basically finding a way to blame white people. And you're like, look, man, here's the story of a black R&B singer molesting these black girls whose black families did not protect them from this black guy who makes black music that other black people are still coming out and buying tickets for, even though this black guy's been molesting these black girls. And they're just sitting there and they're like, I blame white people. And you're like, is anything not white people's fault? Could there ever be anything that's just like, this is on you? Like, you guys got to clean this up. I don't know. I don't even really look at it that way, but it's like, once you start going like, oh, this is society's image of black girls, like, no. Here's the thing. This has nothing to do with race. This is the fact that this is a rich guy who's famous. And he made I Believe I Can Fly. It's really funny where they go, there's this one part in the documentary where they're like, so right after the pissing tape comes out, they were like, it was kind of like spreading around, and now everyone in the, like, people who listen to R&B music knew R. Kelly was pissing on a 15-year-old. And then he was like, all right, I got to drop a hit to win them all back. And they were like, well, let's see what you do. And that's when he dropped Ignition, and everybody was like, you're cool. Like, basically, that song was just so good that everybody was just like, all right, fuck, we're going to dance to this one.
He needs
like pretty good song.
He needs like his Jailhouse Rock when he gets to prison to get
More
back
or
out.
less.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Enough about R. Kelly. Okay. Let's talk about the news a little bit. What's going on in the world? So, 2 things real quick that I don't have a ton to say on, but I think are worth noting up top. There's 2 pretty big events in foreign policy that are going on right now. One, Trump is having his 2nd summit with Kim Jong-un. Okay? Pretty big moment. And look, I don't really know what to say on this or what that I haven't said in the past, but it's really quite something to watch people in the mainstream media, which I've been seeing on CNN and MSNBC for the last week, doing everything they can to shit on President Trump as he goes to meet with this guy that no other recent president has been able to sit down and meet with him or his father. It's been quite a while since there's been direct meetings. And everybody's just trying. They're so obsessed with scoring political points against Donald Trump. Like, it's like, well, he promised, he said it was a victory last time, and we still haven't gotten them to denuclearize, and he's probably not. Well, look at Donald Trump now. He's trying to, like, temper expectations because he knows he's not going to get anything. And they're bashing this guy and, like, undermining the meeting. And it's just like, guys, he's meeting with a nuclear-armed madman. Just chill out for a second. Do you realize how dangerous a game this is? And it's really something. To watch them, it's like if you go in and hold up a bank with a machine gun and you kill a couple hostages and then you start making demands, there will be a negotiator who comes and starts talking to you right away. And they'll talk to you. They'll be like, look, well, how about if we send some food in and you let a couple hostages go? Or what do you want? You want money? You want this? You want... Okay, they'll try to talk to you. Oh, this is going to go bad. You should turn yourself in. Like, they'll try to somehow talk. Can you imagine if there's that guy goes and starts talking to them, and then right next to him there's a bunch of other people who go like, he's talking to a murderer. What a terrible person this guy is. It's like, guys, let him talk. This is a fucking situation with essentially millions of hostages. So what are we doing here? Like, let's see what happens. I don't know. It's like, oh, he got nothing. They're downplaying. And then it just makes Trump look good because they're like, oh, he got nothing. And they're like, well, he got 3 of our hostages freed. I mean, that's probably something to their family. It's like, okay, so if nothing else comes out of it, but they're talking to the South Koreans, they're talking to us, and a few people who are being held in this fucking nightmare are home. Seems all right. Seems like something. Seems like it was at least worth trying. I don't know. Countries who are talking to each other and negotiating with each other don't tend to just nuke each other out of nowhere, right? So maybe it's a good idea that we just keep that going. If he talks to him and he gets him to release one prisoner from one of those fucking work/death camps that they have, then it was worth it. So anyway, it's the media response to that has been really crazy to me. And of course, he's got fucking Pompeo going over there with him. So I'm sure, it's like just the last person you would want to have on this trip. Anyway, the other thing in foreign policy that's worth mentioning is the stuff that's going on with Venezuela. And man, the war drums have really started beating for Venezuela. Just pay attention to this shit, everybody, because I remember, I can go all the way back to 2002, which is, that gives me like OG status now. And like, I'm a great grandfather in this world of political commentary. Because I can actually remember well, it was my first year in college, I believe, in 2002. And I remember the war propaganda with Iraq building up throughout the whole year. Like, it was pretty shortly after, I don't remember exactly, but it was pretty shortly after September 11th, 2001, when Iraq got put on the list of the axis of evil, the 3 countries, Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Basically, everybody who had nothing to do with 9/11 got put on this list. 3 countries who all hate each other, who never conspired together at all. They all became the 3 countries that we hate. And you see North Korea to this day still having all of these issues. Iran to this day, all these issues. And Iraq, that's been fucking completely destroyed. So we're satisfied with Iraq. But Venezuela, this is the new one. And they are pushing for this fucking war, man. And there is all types of war propaganda going on. The crazy thing now is that we have the internet, which there was the internet in 2002, but it wasn't the internet as we know it. There wasn't social media. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't all this shit. And the other big thing is that it's not just having the internet. It's having the internet, having social media, and having everybody with a camera in their fucking hand. Even in fucking Venezuela, where they're basically starving to death, you'll still get all these fucking cell phone videos out of there. They got fucking, at least some people there have fucking cell phone videos. So you're seeing these videos, and the stories will come out that, oh, the government set fire to this fucking train carrying food supplies in. It's like, oh, and then a video comes out and you see it's a protester throwing a Molotov cocktail. It's It's like, no, sorry, you tried to get us with that one, but just keep your eye on this fucking shit, because Trump, the fucking, you know, I don't even know if sellout is the right word. He's a fucking idiot. Like, he's got a gut instinct that is fucking genius in him, but he doesn't understand the complexities of half the shit that's going on around him. And by the way, he's not pulling troops out of Syria. He's backed off of that already because he's got fucking Bolton and Pompeo and all these people in his ear, and they're pushing him toward this war with Venezuela. This is like, it's going to be a fucking nightmare. And they're already trying to do this thing where they're like, well, the real problem is that there's going to be all these refugees. There's going to be all this immigration into America from Venezuela if we don't go in and stop this. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, they've been pretty much on the verge of starving to death for a while now, and we haven't seen like an inflow of immigration. But you know what that is? That's the way to get all these guys. See, this is, and I've heard this over and over about the threats of immigration from Venezuela. So here's what that is. That's the fact that all these Trump supporters, right? All the people, like Trump went into South Carolina where they have all these military bases and they're fucking like real red country, and Jeb Bush was supposed to win there. Except Trump entered into the scene and said, you know what? They lied us into the war in Iraq. We never should have fought that war. These wars are bullshit. What we need to do is protect our borders. And he destroyed Jeb Bush in South Carolina. He destroyed Marco Rubio. I don't even know, was Jeb Bush still in South Carolina? Yes, he was. He was still in. And now what they're doing is they're trying to play on all those guys. You know, the Republicans are supposed to be the loyalists to the military-industrial complex. I'm talking about the Republican voters. They're the people who are supposed to support every fucking war, and they've been doing it for decade upon decade upon decade, but now they care more about immigration than they do about fucking all these wars. So that's their sales pitch to them. Well, we better go fight this war, or there's going to be crazy immigration coming over here.
Also, it's new and sexy, like the Middle East, but everyone else did that. We're South America. When was the last time we went to war in South America?
They really just recycle like the old things. Like it goes like the Middle East.
Oh, because now it's on our
Russia.
Hemisphere.
Well, but it's
a risk on our hemisphere.
South America is actually like where we started. That's where the military-industrial complex like first fucking kicked off. But now we're back. We've come full circle.
Yeah.
We'll hit them again. Not that we ever stopped interfering in South America, but there's a lot of war propaganda, a lot of bullshit around there, and don't, you know. There was
as a total theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
What is a war with South America? Like, I've read up on what a war with North Korea looks like. Not an easy war. That thing is just armed up. You got to actually do a ground invasion. They can rock the shit out of Seoul. Like they'll just take out Seoul. Like Seoul will be gone. There'll be mass casualties and
tens of millions of people could potentially die.
And the North Koreans have been propagandized. That's probably not the word, but that America's coming to kill you guys and we have to defend.
Well, that's exactly the
and they're ready to fucking fight. Like that's a battle. What is Venezuela? Not that we should go in, but is it like an epically tough fight? Will that military just fold?
Well, the big difference there is the nuclear weapon threat, right? Like
Venezuela doesn't have no nukes?
No nukes in Venezuela.
And is there a good chance that the army wouldn't even support Maduro anymore?
I don't know. I really don't know, because they're still supporting him now.
Right.
So I don't know.
That usually becomes, and I'm kind of talking about my period here, but it seems like that's one of the biggest factors is if the military will sell out the dictator, which is what you saw in Egypt with Mubarak. Yeah, they basically just folded on him. That becomes one of the biggest things. You got to come up with a lot of funds to basically pay off your military.
Yes, that's it. That's how it goes. Whoever controls the military runs the government. That's how it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
That's how it works here. If you don't have the generals, you don't have the government. That's it. That's what the government is at the end of the day. It's the guns. Who's got the guns? So he still has them. That's why he's still there. Will they fight for him? I don't know. But I got to say, there's something very intrinsic in human nature that if things are coming apart, nothing rallies people together like an invasion from the outside. Because the people know, at least I don't want that fucking guy ruling over me. Especially America, who is viewed, rightly so,
you mean they just don't want
the great imperialist force.
They just don't want the foreign invader.
Yeah.
No one's like, it's our savior showing up.
If you look at, there's lots of different examples of this, but if you look at India under British colonization, right? India, now, don't get me wrong, there were certainly some really, horrific humanitarian crimes that the British committed. But overall, the standard of life in India went up under British colonization. There's really no doubt about that. And there's lots of different metrics you can use. I mean, just like the standard of living, the birth rate, the literacy rate, the production rate, everything went up. Sometimes people like play around with the numbers sometimes. Or they'll do these things where they'll be like, India went from producing, 18% of the world's textiles to only 4% of the world's textiles, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass, but it'll be something like that. It's like, yeah, but there was an industrial revolution. So that's everyone else started producing more. And if you actually look at it, they produced more than they did before the British took over. That being said, they still rallied around Gandhi. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're making things better. People don't want to be dominated. It's a very basic understanding of, ask anybody who's got kids age 5 to 15. Do they like to be told what to do? No, nobody likes to be told what to do. Nobody likes to be dominated. And so that's right away. I think there's a very good chance what Maduro said is if you invade Venezuela, you're going to have a Vietnam on your hands. And I think he might be right. I think he might be right about that. And of course, the other, possibility is that, as bad as things are, that it could completely destroy the country, All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Blue Chew. That's right, Blue Chew. It's the performance-enhancing chew. It offers the same ingredient as the other big two, Viagra and Cialis, but it's the only chewable, so it works faster than the pills, up to twice as fast. Also, there's no doctor's visits, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at a pharmacy. It ships directly to your door in a discreet package. Blue Chew chewables are prescribed online by a doctor and made in the USA. Blue Chew gives you confidence in bed every time. You and your partner will love it. Just chew it and do it. And we have a great deal for you guys. If you visit BlueChew.com, you get your first order free when you use the promo code PROBLEM. You just pay $5 for shipping, but you get the first order free. Again, the stuff works better than Viagra and Cialis. It gets in your system quicker, and no doctor's visits, no awkward conversations. Go to BlueChew.com, use the promo code PROBLEM. That's BLUE Chew.com, promo code PROBLEM. All right. Let's get back into the show. So Marco Rubio, by the way, Senator Marco Rubio, whose bio reads, you know what, why don't you actually pull this picture up go to Twitter and go to Marco Rubio's Twitter, whose bio reads follower of Christ. He tweeted out as a very thinly veiled threat to Maduro and the Maduro government, a picture of Muammar Gaddafi. Here, let's just pull up Marco Rubio's Twitter. It probably won't be too far down there. And go down a little bit. Right there. Pull that one up. That tweet with the two pictures. So this is what he tweets out. For anybody who's just listening in audio, it's a picture of Muammar Gaddafi sitting on a gold throne with some shades on and a nice Miami Vice white blazer. And then the other picture is a picture of Muammar Gaddafi being beaten to death, dragged through the streets by some Libyan, gang that was probably funded by the CIA. And, this is the whole story. He was sodomized to death.
They took his balls, right?
Huh?
They took his balls.
Yeah, they castrated him, they sodomized him, they fucking did, and just beat him within an inch of his life. Now, first off, even if you, let's just say that you think Gaddafi deserved that and that this was a great idea. You still think, if you're not a sociopathic monster, I don't understand how you tweet something like that out gleefully. I don't care who it was, no matter what they did in the world, that they deserve something like that. If somebody, this isn't somebody who faced justice in a court of law. This isn't like Saddam Hussein being hung after being convicted in a fucking court, even though I know it's a show trial. But still, this is a guy who was just beaten in the streets in the most brutal, just graphically disgusting way. And Marco Rubio just tweets this out. This fucking little Marco, who's fucking probably never been in a fist fight in his life, just tweets this out and by the way, the unbelievable stupidity of this. And maybe it's not stupid. Maybe he's just evil and he knows exactly what he's doing. But as Donald Trump is going to meet with the North Koreans, and what you're saying you want is for them to denuclearize. You're going to tweet out a picture of what happens to a denuclearized dictator who we want to overthrow.
Oh, yeah.
Like, nice move, bro. Because Gaddafi turned over, he like fucking ended his whole weapons program, turned over all his fucking, he tried to help. After 9/11, he knew Cowboy George W. Bush was in there, and he was like, I'm going to fucking work with you guys, help you guys round up the terrorists. Oh, and also because those same guys, and this is the truth with Saddam Hussein too, those same guys were a pain in their ass. But you think we want to get these radical Sunnis like the Al-Qaeda? You know who really wants to fucking get them? Iran, fucking Assad, Saddam Hussein, and
they know
Muammar
America's a
Gaddafi.
racist. They're going to be like, hey, look what these brown Muslims are doing. And it's going to be a problem for all of us.
Well, that's right.
They know.
But they know that these guys can, they know how easily they could propagandize people into those wars.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't the real thing with Gaddafi that he was going to start pricing oil in gold, and that he was going to break the whole petrodollar? So we're like, fuck, we got to get rid of that guy.
Yeah, but I think he had even suspended those plans.
Oh, really?
He had plans for those. I think it was like around the year 2000 when he was planning that. Go check that on your own, guys. It's an interesting thing to look into.
Is that part of what,
2000, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi were both talking about trading oil in euros and in gold.
And I think
we don't like that.
I think Iraq also gave some like big oil contracts to China, which we weren't too thrilled about. I'm not too sure about that one. And then in terms of that game at the moment, I think Venezuela a little while back started pricing in euros, which was the first time someone priced something in oil and something else. Maybe just on the futures or something.
Look, dude, this is what these things are really all about. And there's a lot, none of us know exactly for sure, but you can deduce it from all of the actions involved. It's like, dude, do you really think we just so happen to be talking about a war in Venezuela? Like, because the people are suffering? Is that really why we care about Venezuela? It's not that it's an oil-rich country in our hemisphere that's propped up by Russia and that does business with Russia. It has nothing to do with that. It's just that the people are suffering. Okay, I'll believe that when John Bolton starts talking about regime change in Haiti. Okay? Somehow that just doesn't seem to be on the list of concerns. Yeah.
They got wooden houses?
Well, they got people suffering. They got people probably suffering more than in Venezuela. Fucking Haiti. Haiti's the poorest country in the hemisphere. So, like, okay, but we never see, we can overlook people suffering anywhere. Especially if you're doing business with us. Believe me, if Madero was doing business with us and not the Russians, we'd overlook people suffering there, no problem. We overlook people suffering all the time. But again, Marco Rubio, what a fucking idiot. That he would tweet this out as if it wasn't, like, as if this was a success. The country of Libya is destroyed. There's a slave trade going on in Libya right now. Not to mention the migrant crisis that's pouring into Europe that's directly related to that. It's a goddamn nightmare. And of course, the one other element to it is that for the guy who was trying to run against Hillary Clinton, remember the Marco Rubio, we have to dispel of the notion that Obama doesn't know exactly what he's doing. Obama knows exactly what he's doing, or whatever that dumb line that he repeated 6 times in that fucking debate was. Well, this was an Obama policy that was championed by Hillary Clinton. And oh, look at that. You're right there with them. Oh, yeah, look at that. When it comes down to the really important shit, you're championing what they did. So, anyway, that's how things work in the establishment. So, that's one big fucking nightmare. Anyway, turning our attention back home to domestic issues, which I will say I get more and more concerned about. You know, me and you were talking about this off air, I believe, recently. And it's something that I struggle to, like, I don't know. I have to work my thoughts out exactly. But, you know, sometimes I'll work them out on air. Why not? But there's something, and I feel particularly, it's a mix of two things, really. It's a mix of how popular socialism has become on the left, and how much the Democratic Party has moved in Bernie Sanders' direction. And it's just having a kid and being much more invested and concerned with the future of our country. And I'll tell you, I've always said that war is my number one issue. And I still feel that way. I mean, you can't look at, say, like what's going on in Yemen, what we did to Iraq, what we did to Libya, what we did to Syria, what we're planning on doing to Venezuela. To me, you can't look at that and it's like, if you're going to start anywhere, so you start there. You start with just the millions of lives that have been fucking destroyed. But it's like when you have a kid, it does kind of change your perspective to where, I understand this is a little bit of a false choice, but theoretically, if it wasn't a false choice, if every kid in Yemen had to die, or my daughter had to die, and I had a choice of that, I guarantee you without a fucking blink, every kid in Yemen is dying. Like, I don't care. I'm protecting my kid. That comes first and foremost to me. I'd with a smile on my face, maybe not a smile, this is getting a little sick. I'd be like, yeah, I get to kill kids. But I'm just saying, if I had to do that as whatever, if it was like some type of scenario you could paint me where it's one or the other, where it's 1,000 kids in some other country die, or your daughter dies, I'd choose the 1,000 kids in another country, or 1,000 kids down the block from me, or, just everybody else in my block, like whatever. It's still going to be my kid every time. And more, when you see people like Bernie Sanders and particularly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, with a straight face, completely seriously, propose destroying the country, you're like, whoa, this is starting to compete for my number one concern right now, because this is true insanity that in the name of some bullshit crisis, you're gonna say we need to have socialism in America. And of course, it's bullshit, because it's not like even AOC's, Green New Deal. It's like, oh my God, the earth is going to end in 12 years. That's why we need racial justice. And you're like, all right, this might just be your, like, using that excuse to push your own politics, because that doesn't even have anything to do with fucking, you know what I mean, with climate change. Anyway, I will tell you, I'm getting more and more concerned with these maniac socialists and what they're proposing. So, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the intellectual leader of our time, she's at it again. She had another one of these live streams from her kitchen where she just cooks and spews retarded ideas. And this was her latest. So let's play this clip.
Our planet is going to be a disaster if we don't turn this ship around. And so it's basically like there's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult. And it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. Is it okay to still have children? And I mean, not just financially, because people are graduating with $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 worth of student loan debt. And so they can't even afford to have kids in a house, but also just this basic moral question, like, what do we do? And even if you don't have kids, there are still children here in the world, and we have a moral obligation to them, to leave a better world for them. And this idea that if we just, I've been working on this for X amount of years, it's like not good enough. Like, we need a universal sense of urgency, and people are trying to introduce watered down proposals that are frankly going to kill us. A lack of urgency is going to kill us. It doesn't matter if you agree that climate change is an important issue. At this point, it doesn't matter. If you believe climate change is a problem, that's not even the issue. It's the issue is how urgently you feel we need to fix it. And if you do not have a sense of urgency to try to turn this around in 10 years, how is that different than a person who's just...
I love how she even confuses herself while she's talking. Mm-hmm. Like, she's got to take these breaks. Like, wait, what was I saying?
She literally...
I feel like I was saying something.
It happens constantly while she talks.
It's not,
she trips herself up.
It's not even that if you think it's a problem, it's that... Wait, no, it is that it's a problem.
So even if you accept that climate change is like a real problem, if you're not a socialist, you're still evil. You're just as bad as the climate denier. And of course she floats out just a reasonable question. Should you even have the right to have children? You know, I mean, we're already borrowing China's Green Leap Forward, so why not their one-child policy also? I mean, how fucking creepy is that? How creepy is that she would just this isn't just some person. This is a very popular congresswoman.
Do you see her, she had her tweet about the Green New Deal and saying, for anyone who has criticism of it, come up with your own blah, 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 get elected, but until then, we're the ones in charge.
Yep.
I think I might have misquoted that, except for I know she said at the end, we're the ones in charge. And that's the really dangerous idea of socialist centralized government, that since we're in charge, we're the ones who are going to make decisions, are going to be better for everyone. No, that's the idea of a voter democracy, is that we elect you so that hopefully you'll represent us.
Well, the idea...
We're not putting you in charge. Yeah.
But the idea is that you're a public servant.
Right,
the idea is that you work for us.
But that's what I'm saying. To take the approach of we're in charge is not even what the system's supposed to be.
Well, that's right. I mean, but, you know, there's like a Freudian slip there, because that is kind of the reality of the situation, is that they are in charge. But that's the level that you're dealing with here. It's like, well, I proposed a radical plan that's bold and will take on climate change. And until you propose a radical plan that's bold, I don't want to hear it. I'm the boss now. And it's like, right, but, you know, what you claim is bold, anyone who understands economics claims is moronic. So what you're really saying is, then you come up with a moronic plan that'll destroy the economy. It's like, no, I'd rather not. That's kind of the whole point. But I will say, there actually are a lot of intellectuals who support Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There's some people with some very, you know, fine credits who are experts in their field who support the Green New Deal, and a bunch of them confronted Senator Dianne Feinstein recently. So let's play that clip of Senator Dianne Feinstein being confronted by the advisors to AOC's campaign.
We're gonna go in and share this letter, and we're gonna do it all together. Yeah. Share it in front of Feinstein. We're asking her to vote yes on the Green New Deal.
We are trying to ask you to vote yes on the Green New Deal.
Please.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We have our own Green New Deal.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if this doesn't get turned around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
The government is supposed to be for the people and by the people and all for the people.
You know what's interesting about this group is I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I've gotten elected. I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality. And I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
I hear what you're saying, but we're the people who voted you. You're supposed to listen to us. That's your,
How old are you?
job. I'm 16. I
well,
can't
you didn't
vote.
vote for me.
Well,
I'm 24.
It doesn't matter. We're the ones who's going to be impacted.
Something.
It doesn't matter. We're going to be the ones who's all impacted.
Oh my
I
God.
understand that.
She's got the fucking kid from Big Daddy lisp. But we are the ones who are going to be impacted. This is, look, man, first off, it takes a lot to get me to like Dianne Feinstein on anything. I don't know if you know, she used to be considered like a left-winger, but now the left has gone so fucking far left that she's fucking Hitler to these people now, because she won't just support the most ridiculous plan ever. Yes, because you don't want to tear down 150 million buildings and rebuild them and get rid of fossil fuels and get rid of nuclear energy and sew up every cow anus in the country. All of a sudden you're the enemy. But I have nothing against these kids. How despicable is that adult? How despicable is that adult in the room who's going to use these children who are clearly just spouting rehearsed lines about things they can't possibly understand? Why would you make your kids so bratty to go? And I know, like you had pointed out when I sent you the video that you're like, oh, this is like an edited version of the video. Even in this edited version, I think she comes off fine. I think that's a completely appropriate thing to say to some 10-year-olds who are coming to you, telling you about what you need to vote on, to be like, maybe you guys need to listen. Maybe you guys don't need to dictate policy. We actually don't run a system where 12-year-olds or 10-year-olds, or one of them was 16. The oldest one there seems 16, said she was 16. Maybe you guys don't actually need to tell us all how to reinvent society. You probably need a little more life experience.
And so my view of that one was that you just go, oh, that's so sweet of you. You made me a card, and you walk away. They're fucking 10 years old. Why you?
Well, they wouldn't take no for an answer. They were like, we want to get you to agree to vote for the Green New Deal. And she was like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, but I just wouldn't be combative with kids. They're kids. They're stupid.
Now, be combative.
You just go.
Let them know.
You just go, great, wonderful. That's so nice that you made me a card.
Could you imagine, man?
I feel bad for those kids that someone's putting all this bullshit into their brains that they're going to die real soon.
You're going to die. These are the faces of the people who will live with the consequences and all this shit. Yeah, that's some real crazy fucking shit. How do you even have a conversation when that's the starting point? You don't care about all these kids dying. Meanwhile, who was it? Al Gore? I think it was Al Gore. It was either Al Gore or Obama who just bought a new house on a new coastal property. And you're like, okay. Well, thought we only had 10 years to turn this around before we're all going to be fucked, right? But it does work as like the perfect fucking excuse. The perfect excuse for socialism. Well, the world's going to end unless we do something about it, right? So how can you be against it? Except you're still talking about all these other issues. Just seems strange. Seems strange to me. So anyway, that's the fucking domestic threat that we're up against now. I mean, we got a lot of them, but this one is really something.
Well, the scariest thing about the global warming is that they're trying to say that this is such a threat that we have to cede authority. It's the same thing what they did with the terrorism. Like, this is such a threat. If we don't give more power to government, we're all fucked. The only way that we can possibly correct this is by handing over more power and authority to the government. And anytime someone's coming up with a boogeyman for, hey, we need you to give us some more power, be afraid. That's what you should be afraid of, the call for more power.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. It's and this stuff is truly it's truly terrifying that this is getting traction. Now, I do think that the country is not so crazy that they would actually go for this. I think it's only in super blue districts that this is even going to be popular. I mean, the at least what we have going for us is that if you really have to explain what this means in real life for people will reject this stuff. I think for the most part now, but the fact that it's even come that close is pretty unsettling, if you ask me. Pretty goddamn unsettling. All right, so let's move on, I suppose.
So do we even know what Ocasio-Cortez was making for dinner?
I don't know.
Seem healthy.
Yeah, no, she's
trying to keep in shape.
Yeah. Well,
I need one of these government jobs where you got time to just be at home at night and cook yourself dinner.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
That's a good deal.
Not so bad. You get a new high-rise, you're cooking some dinner.
Nice and relaxed, too. Like, she's not in a rush, you know? I feel like when I'm cooking, I got to get this thing done in 5 minutes. It's not just because I'm a fat fuck. I just feel pressured on time. Am I really pressured on time? No. But just my life's unsettling. I feel like I got shit to get done.
There is
Look at her vibe. Her vibe is
that's like chilling.
That's like grandma cooking for the grandkids.
That is good politics. What she's doing right there. It's very authentic. And this is what, did you see, or we talked about this, but you didn't see, but when Elizabeth Warren tried to do her version of this, and it was just like, oh my God, like she sips a beer and she doesn't even know how to sip a beer, right? Like it's horrible. But at least, you know, she has the Trump thing, like whatever you say about him, he is being him and she is being herself. Like they are authentically that person. Doesn't make it any less terrifying. Okay. So let's transition into this article that somebody sent me here. So what started this morning on Twitter, somebody sent me somebody tagged me in response to a tweet by some guy.
Twitter beef.
A little bit of a Twitter beef. And we didn't really go back and forth.
Do people call them that? They should start.
They do now. I'll tell you,
we're tweefing
now. We're tweefing at the Meacocks. Robby Bernstein. The fire does it again. All right. So we were tweefing out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just responded once. He didn't respond back to me or anything like that. But so he tagged me in this in a tweet from some guy who I've never heard of before. But he's a blue check mark who has half as many Twitter followers as me. I say this quite often. Some blue check mark guy. Anyway, whatever. I'm just saying, Twitter, get on your game. Fucking, done Rogan 3 times. I'm on Fox News every week. Just think maybe I should be verified by now. Okay. Anyway, whatever. That's not here or there. That's petty. And I'm not going to complain about that. But seriously, Jack, what the fuck is going on, man? Verify me. I don't even call people faggot on Twitter.
What do you got to do to get verified? Isn't it cooler to be unverified? It's like, is this really the Dave Smith? Maybe
that's
it's
what
a
I keep
different
telling
Dave
myself.
Smith.
Oh, that's interesting. I just noticed the guy follows me. Well, okay. So anyway, it's John Miller. He is a White House correspondent for Blaze TV. He's host of the White House Brief. Okay. So the White House correspondent for Blaze TV, which is it used to be owned by Glenn Beck. I'm not sure if he still owns it or not. I think he was selling. I don't know if he did sell. I know there was talk of Ben Shapiro buying it. I don't actually know what ended up happening with that. But John Miller, he had a tweet. I responded to it, but he tweeted out, and people tagged me in this response. He said, I had a brief flirtation with libertarianism, though I quickly retreated once I realized that when drugs, prostitution, and suicide are legalized, they won't care less if the entire Constitution goes up in flames. So, I responded back. My response was, I said, thank God drugs, prostitution, and suicide are illegal. Those laws have led to a society that never allows the Constitution to be violated. Well, anyway, just one little back and forth. But there is, I don't know, just to go through these things quickly. Number one, suicide being illegal is patently absurd. Number one, it is illegal, but it is absolutely absurd that suicide is illegal. Someone tweeted at me in response to my tweet, and they said, I think suicide should be illegal. I think it should carry the death penalty. I thought that was pretty funny. So the idea of suicide being illegal.
Go after the loved one's estate.
What do you
go
think?
after the parents? The guy just, he's dead and he just committed a crime, so someone's got to pay for it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but the idea that suicide, like if you legalized suicide, then a lot of people will start committing suicide. You're like, I was going to commit suicide. I just didn't want to get in trouble. I don't think that's really a big issue. But okay, so he's talking about legalizing drugs and prostitution, because once you legalize drugs and prostitution, then they won't care if the entire Constitution goes up in flames.
That's because we'll be having so much fun. We're not going to have to worry about these things anymore.
Well, I mean,
we're going to be doing our drugs, our prostitutes, living the good life, and there's going to be so much economic freedom. Yeah, go burn the Constitution. What do I give a shit for? I got money to pay for these whores and drugs.
Yeah, no,
that's all that anyone ever cared about.
I think that's his argument, more or less, is that you're just going to be so, you'll be so
happy,
distracted with your drugs and prostitution that you won't care about the Constitution.
I think he's missing the economic freedom part, where we're all going to have so much money that we can afford so many whores.
Yes.
We're going to be able to see past who even needed a document, who needed that government. We didn't need any of those things altogether.
Well, that is the other way it could go. Of course, in reality, not just in some, made up what might happen scenario, we've had a pretty aggressive policy on drugs for about 40 years. Some might even call it a war on drugs. And in this time, Constitution hasn't really been followed so well. We've been pretty aggressive on prostitution as well. And the funny thing about, the real irony in these fucking tweets, in this tweet, is that he goes well, if you legalize drugs, people won't care about the Constitution. Well, okay, John Miller. Then, sorry, I had to check his name. John Miller, please explain to me where in the Constitution you find the authorization for a federal war on drugs. Oh, see, so we have to violate the Constitution. We have to give the Constitution, the federal government, powers that were never delegated to the federal government in the Constitution, because otherwise people might violate the Constitution. It's pretty clear in Article 1, Section 8, what the federal government's legitimate constitutional authority is. And the 10th Amendment is pretty clear, too, that any powers that are not enumerated to the federal governments are left to the states and to the people. And so, I don't know. I don't see anything about the war on drugs. I don't see anything about a DEA I certainly don't see anything about a fucking, DEA SWAT raids. I mean, just think about how many people's constitutional rights have been violated in the course of the war on drugs. Yet your concern is that while we wouldn't be violating anyone's constitutional rights by legalizing drugs, they might just get so high that they don't care about the Constitution anymore. So in other words, we better burn the Constitution to make sure that no one in the future burns the Constitution. By the way, the Constitution has already gone up in flames. I hate to break it to you, John Miller, but the Constitution went up in flames a long time ago. A long fucking time ago. What do you want to take a look at, okay? Well, the 10th Amendment. What does that even mean? What's the point of it even being there anymore? Okay? Let's go through the fucking amendments. Let's go through them, right? Okay. You have the fucking First Amendment. Congress can write no laws that violate your freedom of speech, right? So you can't, Congress can write no laws that infringe on the people's right to free speech. Okay, well, from what I understand from the Mueller investigation, there's a whole bunch of people who are looking at decades in prison because they said something they weren't supposed to say to federal agents. Right? Wouldn't that be protected under freedom of speech? I thought they can say whatever they want to say. I thought there can't be any laws against your freedom of speech. Well, they didn't do anything except talk. So, okay, there's your First Amendment. The Second Amendment.
So you're saying going to jail for lying to the government is a violation of the Constitution because
absolutely,
that should be
all you did was say
free
things.
Speech. Now, isn't in the Constitution? Isn't there the kicker on free speech of I guess like running into a theater or fight? Like, aren't there some kickers on it?
No, that's not in the Constitution. That was in a Supreme Court decision in the early 1900s under Woodrow Wilson. And yeah, what he said was what the judge said. Blanking on his name, Wendell Holmes, I believe. What he said was that yeah, right, the famous "you can't yell fire in a crowded theater." And you know what he was talking about? Anti-war activists who were encouraging people to not sign up for the draft for World War I.
Right.
So yes, okay, some judge interpreted it, but that's what I mean by the Constitution went up in flames. Half the time it's because some fucking judge interpreted it.
Even that initial judge interpretation.
How many people are sitting in jail, moving on to the Second Amendment now, how many people are sitting in jail on firearms charges? You know how many people are in jail because they had a, quote, illegal gun? Fucking ton of them.
Right, it's in the Constitution, right to bear arms.
Right to bear arms. That's all they were doing. So, okay, there's that one. Third Amendment, what's that? Is that the one about going in your house?
But I guess that one has the theoretical kicker of the well-regulated.
Yeah,
what does it mean,
Yeah,
well-regulated?
sure. I mean, you can kind of get into these at all, but okay, Third Amendment, is that the one about going into your house, I think? Yeah, right. So, okay, right, the government can't go into your house. Okay, unless you get swatted by a gamer who was angry at you.
Hilarious.
Right? The Fourth Amendment? Let me introduce you to my friends at the NSA, and you tell me how the Fourth Amendment's doing. All right? I mean, we could go through every fucking one of these. It's all in flames. It's in flames. It's almost like a piece of paper written in the late 1700s doesn't stop tyrants in 2019. Shocking. Okay? So, obviously, this is,
That's why we need our drugs and suicide. It's depressing.
Yeah, if we're going to put the Constitution in flames, at least let us have drugs and hookers. Am I right? I won't use the hookers anymore. I'm a married Christian conservative. But drugs. We can still have some fun with drugs. I mean, come on. I'm in the process of converting.
And let's be honest, you only do the hookers after you've taken the drugs. No one goes into the evening, hey, let's just get some hookers. You do the drugs first.
I go, let's get some coke.
Yeah.
Next thing you know,
you do a whole bunch of drugs and
like, how do these hookers get here? I don't even remember. There's drugs. All right. So I thought this tweet was kind of silly. I wonder if this guy followed me before. Or if he followed me after the tweet. Anyway, I don't know. But somebody tweeted at me an article that he had written about libertarianism and the shortcomings of libertarians. And I've said for a long time, this has been a long-running thing on the show, that anybody, if you send me any articles that are like debunking or criticizing libertarianism, that we'd talk about them on the show and we'd try to go through them together and see what we got here. And unless it's just the only scenario where I won't go through it is just if it's somebody, if it's so irrelevant and so stupid that it's not even worth taking on. But even if it's really stupid, if it's someone somewhat relevant who puts it out, then I think it's worth taking on. And this guy is, he works for the Blaze. He's their White House correspondent. He's verified on Twitter. That's enough for me to go, okay, let's take this on.
Isn't it the Blaze is Glenn Beck's thing, right?
Yeah, that's what I said before. Oh. It's Glenn Beck's thing. I think Glenn Beck might have sold it. I'm not sure. Glenn Beck, by the way...
Wasn't he kind of libertarian?
Last I heard, he identified as a libertarian. I don't really think he ever was a libertarian, but that was... After leaving Fox News for a little while, he started saying, I'm a libertarian, and, he was... Anyway, I don't know. Okay, so here is the article. It was written on February 21st, so this is fairly fresh. And it is by... oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, this isn't by the same guy. Okay, this is somebody else, but they tweeted this at me. All right, so then maybe... I've got this wrong. Okay, it's by somebody else, but I guess he tweeted it. That's what I had. That was the mistake that I had.
All right.
Anyway, still worth going through. Why libertarians are wrong, and it's at spectator.us. Why libertarians are wrong. They don't appreciate that the political crisis could come sooner than the economic one. All right? So let's dive into this. Now, as I say when we always read these things, me and you, our whole worldview might be changed right now. Let's see. Maybe they'll poke a hole in this whole shit that I've been preaching for a while, and I'll be like, holy shit, you got me. That's a really good point. I always maintain that I'm open to that. I'm open to somebody showing me that there's something I hadn't thought about, making a really good point, and me going, you know what, you got me now. The reason, look, I used to be a left-wing guy. I'm a libertarian now because libertarians came along and showed me that I was wrong and that there was a better way. There were superior ideas. So I was like, okay, you're right. You know what? And at first I was like, you've got to be wrong. I looked into it more. And I was like, you know what? They're right. So I'm over here now. So you could do the same for me. You could do the same for me this time. Let's see. All right. Reading from the article. My libertarian friends object to some of my recent writings, in particular an essay for First Things, proposing a moderate economic nationalism as, quote, a new conservative agenda. All right. Well, that's the first sentence of the article. So let's start with the idea of proposing a moderate economic nationalism. Well,
the word's moderate in there, so I'm good with it, Dave.
Well,
as long as it's in the middle, as long as it's moderate. Well, as long as it's like those rebels that we were arming.
Well, they did. Rob, they turned out to not be so moderate. See, a lot of times just saying the word moderate doesn't actually make something moderate.
Damn, is that
so?
The way
No,
it
you
works?
were on. Your logic was airtight, but there's a problem with the word moderate. The problem is that a lot of people who aren't actually that moderate use the word moderate, and then they don't end up being moderate. But I wanted to be with you. And then, of course, he said we need moderate economic nationalism. Well, how about if you said we need moderate economic socialism? Would that be okay? How about it wasn't that moderate?
Also,
you just wanted
if something works, put the fucking pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
Well, why are we going to moderate it if it's good? If that's a working system, then let's do it. I'm all in.
Well, but you're absolutely right about that, by the way. It's like when people advocate for a minimum wage. And it's like, well, if things would be better if the government set prices for wages, shouldn't they also set prices for like flour and steel and wheat and cars and planes and everything? I mean, if setting prices is a superior model to letting the market determine it, if there aren't like negative consequences from that, why stop at just wages? I mean, wages are one really important price, but there's lots of other prices. The price of labor is only one price. Why are you robbing us of all this other good socialism, right? Okay, so moderate economic nationalism. Well, what if we said moderate economic socialism? Or how about moderate economic national socialism? Okay, my point here really is that nationalism and socialism are the same thing, essentially. They're basically the same fucking thing. In fact, the words are used interchangeably. Interchangeably. If someone says they want to nationalize the banks or they want to socialize the banks, tell me what the difference in that is. If someone says they want to nationalize the healthcare system or socialize the healthcare system, tell me the difference in those things. See, socialism is really just a myth, and nationalism is the reality. I mean, tell me, even you could say, oh, well, the Soviet Union, they weren't nationalists. They were globalists, but were they? Did they run the globe? Do you think there was no national pride in Russia during the Soviet Union? No, there was. They were essentially nationalists.
Just, I guess stated differently, and maybe this is linguist or semantics, but if you're nationalizing medicine, if you're going to nationalize healthcare, you're offering socialized healthcare. So socialized is the byproduct of nationalizing something.
Right.
Yeah. So they're one and the same. They're like, if you nationalize the banks, you now have socialized money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. The words are used interchangeably. And in fact, in actuality, any example of socialism that you could find is really nationalism. Like, name me a socialist country that's ever existed, and I can point out all the nationalism. You could go through any of them. They are nationalists. You know, there was only one that actually called themselves the National Socialists, and it didn't work out that well for them. They lost a big war, but they were doing pretty good before that. You know what I mean?
And they got rid of some Jews
halfway
for us.
there. Yeah. They definitely handled a few bankers for us. But anyway, there were some innocent people caught up in the mix. Okay, so a new conservative agenda. All right, the various intellectual factions on the American right are all susceptible to utopianism and dangerously wishful thinking when they dwell too much in their own minds. They all need the benefit of a look through someone else's eyes once in a while, even to see their own concerns more clearly. Well, all right, I guess I don't really object to the idea of that. Like, sure, I guess it's good to look at somebody else's perspective and get more perspective on your own ideas and not just live in your own mind and live in reality. So I agree with that. In the letter below, I respond to some friends' objections and summarize, tidily I hope, a few vital questions to which libertarians offer inadequate answers. All right, well, we'll see if we can offer some adequate answers. My interlocutor's major point can be, I might be mispronouncing that, but I think it just means people in the discussion. Their major point can be sketched as follows. What's wrong with America's economy and politics is the result of over-centralization and decentralization. Turning power back to the states in smaller units is the necessary remedy. Well, let's just say, since the title of the article is Libertarians Are Wrong, what libertarians believe is not as simple as over-centralization is the problem and decentralization is the answer. That's might be one aspect of like a pragmatic step that libertarians would propose. But what libertarians believe in is liberty. That's what the word comes from. That's what we support. So we believe in the liberty of the individual, that people should be free to do what they want with their lives so long as they don't infringe on the rights of other people, also known as the non-aggression principle, also known as private property. So decentralization, but essentially what we believe is the idea of self-government. Essentially what we believe is the bullshit that everybody else pretends to believe, but we really believe it. So we actually believe, like when you say like, well, the government's authority is derived from the people, we actually believe that. We actually believe that people have a right to self-determine. So given that you believe that, decentralization is a good first step because you have more, like if there was a government that, let's say, governed over this square block, we would probably have a better chance of influencing that government than we would one that governs New York City, where we'd have less of a chance. And we'd have even less of a chance if it governs New York State and less of a chance if it governs the United States of America. Because once you get to that level and there's 350 million people under your reign, basically the individual has no say in their own government. That would be, to me, more or less why libertarians support decentralization. No nationalist program for strengthening manufacturing for the sake of the middle class is workable because the social philosophers Friedrich Hayek and Ludwig von Mises demonstrated that all economic interventions by government involve insufficient knowledge of consumer preferences and specific market circumstances. Okay. You know, I guess you could call them social philosophers. I'd call them economists. But yes, I would say that they both demonstrated in economic intervention by governments involved insufficient knowledge of consumer preferences. I agree with that. But just to take that a bit further, lots of businesses don't have sufficient knowledge of consumer preferences. Those would be the ones that go out of business. And that's the majority of them. The majority of businesses go out of business. I think most of them go out of business rather quickly. Most new startups don't make it. So yeah, but governments definitely don't know. All right. Economic decisions have to be made by those directly involved in market transactions. An economy is too complex for anyone else to act wisely. That's a crude gloss, but it gets the gist. It's not that economic decisions have to be made by those directly involved in market transactions. It's the fact that it's the argument from Mises is that it's the only way you could possibly know. Because you have, look, here's the difference between governments and companies, right? It's quite simple. It's the profit and loss system. So governments don't operate under the profit and loss system. Our government's been running a loss close to $1 trillion a year for quite a while now. They're not going out of business quite yet, okay? Try doing that as a business. You won't be around for very long. So businesses have this cleansing mechanism. The market has a cleansing mechanism that is the profit and loss system. So if you're not profiting, which means other people don't want to come and voluntarily give you their business, you go away. You fail, and you're gone. And what's left are the people who are doing that properly. Now, the pricing index that Mises talked about, not index, but the price calculation problem that he talked about was that in a market, when you have prices, there's information embedded in the prices. What people will pay for certain things, how much it costs, how much, like manpower and labor is necessary to extract certain things. So when you're deciding whether you use steel or aluminum, you have all of this information. If the prices are being dictated by a central authority, there's no information in the prices, and therefore they don't know how to allocate resources. All right. Rather than worrying about industrial employment and the middle class, what we ought to worry about, my friend characteristically argues, is the national debt and cost of government's unfunded liabilities, especially entitlements. Well, we ought to worry about, I don't know. I've never heard any libertarians say we don't need to worry about the middle class. I don't really know what worrying means. The question here would be, what policy are you prescribing? So I worry about the middle class. I mean, I think, truthfully speaking, we should probably worry more about the poor than the middle class, but okay, we can be concerned with people's well-being.
When he says worrying about the middle class, he's making the mistake of putting us into his framework of that government needs to allocate resources and there's going to be winners and losers. Whereas when you're taking the libertarian framework, we're saying, no, if we allow economic freedom, it just benefits everybody across the board. I don't need to focus on one group because it's not like I'm taking resources from the other group and picking a winner.
Right.
I'm creating one model of freedom that leads to prosperity and allows everybody to benefit equally. So there's no reason to focus on the middle class. I'm creating one policy that benefits rich, middle, poor. It's good for everyone.
Right. Yes. Well, right. Okay. So I agree with you on that. All right. Let's continue from the article. I'm skeptical whether any decentralization short of secession would be meaningful for purposes of this discussion. And secession simply produces nationalism for a smaller, weaker unit. All right. Sure. But, again, it's in the right direction.
It's also, when you say weaker, you have to define weaker, because weaker with better representation for the individuals might be great.
Yes.
To me, when you say weaker, what you really, I think, mean is on like the world stage. And so, great. Does that mean so we can't go to war with other countries? Perfect.
Right.
That's...
right. I mean, so are we going to say that Sweden is weaker than Russia? Well, I mean, the people live a much higher standard of living.
Right. What do you
mean by that? They've enjoyed in the last 130 years, they've enjoyed a lot more peace and prosperity than Russia has. So what exactly is weak? I mean, that's you hit the nail on the head. Like, how are we defining this? I mean, take Norway versus the continent of Africa. I mean, I understand there's many nations in Africa, but like, what does size mean in terms of weakness? Why would it necessarily be weaker? There are small nations that are far richer than much bigger nations. So I don't know that that's a given that it would be weak. I also don't see quite why he just dismisses decentralization short of secession. I mean, you could have something like, let's just say we ended the federal war on drugs and said states are allowed to do what they want when it comes to drug laws. Well, that would be a radical decentralization from what we have right now. And what you'd probably have is, states like California and states like Texas would probably do much different things on those laws. But you wouldn't have a DEA. You wouldn't have all these SWAT raids all the time. You wouldn't have all these people in federal prisons for nonviolent crimes. So it would probably be better. The libertarian position has never been that a state government can't do anything wrong, only the federal government can do things wrong. So I don't quite get his point. But yeah, secession would probably be like a better scenario than just a minor decentralization. Short of secession, you have a financial system, including the Federal Reserve, and a central government whose policies are never going to be a libertarian's idea of natural or neutral. Well, they're never going to be a libertarian's idea of moral or economically efficient, I would say. And I don't think those are libertarian ideas. I think that's just fact. But it's also, short of secession, you have a financial system, including a Federal Reserve. Well, not necessarily. I mean, Andrew Jackson ended a central bank. There wasn't mass secession under him. He just ended the bank. I mean, the Federal Reserve was created by an act of Congress, so an act of Congress could end it. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Well, I'm proposing the End the Federal Reserve Act of 2019. There we go. No more Fed. Okay? I mean, just for the sake of argument, let's put us back on a gold standard. We could do that. Print from the Treasury and we're putting back on a gold standard. Wouldn't be my ideal solution, but it'd be a lot better. So there you go. We're off the Fed. I mean, it's not, to just take that as a guarantee is just not true. Okay. Pharmaceutical companies, the financial sector, agribusiness, and the administrative class do not seem to have any trouble identifying what their interests are or how they can use federal policy to advance those interests. They don't suffer from a complexity or knowledge problem. I don't know what to say. This is just a complete misunderstanding of what Mises was talking about with the complexity and knowledge problem. So yes, that's right. Special interests buy off the government and then use the force of the government to direct resources into their pockets. That's kind of a big part of our point.
Yeah, that's why we don't want the government, you dummy.
That's a big part of it.
That's 50% of the... Let's say there's... the 50% of the argument is, hey, if there's power, it's going to be taken over by powerful people, and it's not going to work in our interests. The other 50% is, to me... it's just so funny. It's also just doesn't work. It's less efficient because the market's better at allocating resources. That makes up, hey, that's why I'm a libertarian. Now to you might also take the moral argument of, well, the freedom is just the root morality of everything, and the freedom of the individual is more important than this idea for the greater good.
Right.
Now we're getting a little in the semantics of why one might be a libertarian, but the point is 50% of the important reason why you don't want government is it's going to become corrupted by companies. And
Absolutely.
He's trying to pretend like that's the issue that, whatever. He's a fucking retard. I don't need to stutter over my words because of his stupidity.
All right. Or to the extent they do, they know what the solution is. Bailouts and rent seeking. Saying, so if they do have a complexity or knowledge problem, then they know the solution, bailouts and rent seeking. Libertarians complain about that, but complaints carry no weight compared to the bottom line. Libertarians prophesy that there will be hell to pay, but exactly who is going to pay and when does the end come? The people making economic decisions today have a limited time horizon for their concerns and plenty of ability to offload their cost. Well, yeah, that's exactly right. They have the ability to offload their costs. That's another problem with government, is now you put the taxpayers on the hook. So, okay, if you're going to say exactly who's going to pay and when does this come to an end, well, I don't know exactly. My guess would be the taxpayers, and when it comes to an end, we're not exactly sure. but it's as sure as when you throw a ball up in the air, it's going to come back down. I don't know. You may not know exactly what the time frame is, like how many seconds. I don't know. I don't know if there's a possible way to know exactly. However, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. If you live beyond your means, you're destined to live beneath your means. So the fact that they offload the costs onto somebody else, again, that's kind of our point. It seems to me that the timeline for political crisis is shorter than the timeline for economic crisis. Okay. Let's start with
We're
this.
playing his game still because we take issue with both those things. If you're a libertarian, we take issue with both those things. Now he's trying to put us into this framework where we only care about some economic crisis. Don't fall into his frame. He's just wrong. We take issue with both of those things.
Yeah, no, look, I completely agree with you. In fact, we see something at the center of both.
Yeah.
So I think the same thing is responsible for both. But let me just look at this sentence. It seems to me that the timeline for political crisis is shorter than the timeline for economic crisis, meaning a political crisis is going to come before an economic crisis comes.
Probably not true.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, okay, maybe. I mean, what is a political crisis? Here's the thing is, you're not defining any of these terms. You're not defining what you mean by a political crisis or what you mean by an economic crisis, and you're just saying, it seems to me the timeline for one is shorter than the other. Well, okay, are we in a political crisis right now? I mean, I don't know what you mean by that. You could certainly argue we are. I mean, I don't know if you've looked around, but Donald fucking Trump is president. Half the country hates the other half's guts. They think they're fucking evil.
But I love everybody.
Yeah, Rob's right in the middle. But I'm saying, half the country thinks if you put on a MAGA hat, that is a sign of racism and fascism. The other half of the country thinks that's trying to make America great. This is awesome. Half the country sees the other half of the country as complicit in murdering babies. The other half looks at them and says, you would deny a woman's basic human rights. They hate each other. They're at each other's throats. And we just elected Donald Trump president. So, I don't know. Donald Trump's president. The FBI is working to overthrow the elected president. And most of the country would root them on while they do it. Do you think a political crisis has come already? Or what do you mean? What's the political crisis coming? Maybe it will get worse. I don't even have a strong opinion on that. Will the political crisis or the economic crisis come first? I don't know. I think we have two that are really bubbling up. I don't know. I think an economic crisis might come before the political crisis or vice versa. However you define it. I don't know how you define that. However, think about this. Why is there a political crisis? Why is it? Why does anybody care? Why would it matter if Hillary Clinton got elected versus Donald Trump would get elected? Why do we have to fight over this? You think about, remember we talked about this when Scott Horton was on the show one time. So you have people who disagree on really, really fundamental, important views. Take religion. There'll be somebody who believes that if you don't accept Jesus Christ into your life, like me, if you don't accept Jesus Christ into your life, you're going to burn in a pit of fire for eternity. And then somebody else is an atheist, and they go, I think that's all silly. I don't believe that at all. And you know what those people do on the market? They shop together. They do commerce together. They're neighbors. They fucking hang out together. They watch the Super Bowl together. There's no conflict there. Where is there conflict? We want prayer in school. That's where there's conflict. When the government comes in. When someone comes in and says, I'm going to rule over you, so you know what I mean? You have to live under my rules. Why was there conflict between why was there all this political crisis between whether Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump was going to win? Because the winner rules over the rest of us. That's why. The political crisis has come because the government has ballooned to the size where it's $4 trillion plus this Leviathan, this monster that's going to that everybody else is going to be subject to. That's why we have a political crisis, because government is so overreaching that now we feel like if we don't win this, our way of life is over. That's how both sides feel. So why the fuck would anyone care? If somebody's like, oh, I think we should have trans bathrooms. So, okay, in Portland, they'll have trans bathrooms, and in Alabama, they won't. You go live your way, they'll go live their way. What's the problem here? The problem is we're making it a federal issue. And Obama's coming out and having an opinion on it. And then fucking, Ted Cruz has a different opinion on it. It's like, well, who's going to win? That's the whole thing. We have very different views about how to live life all the time. You just walk down the street. There's 10 people around you who have drastically different views than you about very, very fundamental, important issues. Everybody just seems to get along reasonably well because we're all just freely associating with each other. All right. Before we reach the point where bailouts and prop-ups are no longer possible, as Adam Smith himself observed, there's a lot of ruin in a country. There will be a hard left or hard right political turn, or simply a hard turn away from the present dispensation. So away from the present system of things. Okay. Well, before we reach a point where bailouts and prop-ups are no longer possible, well, that's possible right now. The reason it's not possible is because our government is bought off by the financial interests. That's why Goldman Sachs got bailed out. They get bailed out because, the head of the Treasury Department used to work for Goldman Sachs. Okay. If I'm wrong about the comparative crisis timelines, I nonetheless foresee a gradual continuing degeneration of our politics and class balance. The urban administrative overclass will continue to grow in power and wealth. The urban and suburban lower classes will become increasingly servile, and the old middle class and heartland will be economically sidelined in many places and in many places depopulated. Okay, I mean, you're just not giving any argument as to why this is going to happen. You're just asserting that the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. I don't know if that's true. That hasn't happened in any time in history. It's certainly in Western civilization. Everybody's been getting richer. Not to say we don't have a million problems, but the idea that the poor are poorer today than they were 30, 40 years ago is just demonstrably not true. It's not true. They have better medicine. They have better technology. They have better housing. There's lots of problems. But the idea that the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer is like an old Marxist trope. It's not true. I don't know why libertarians are not more alarmed by this likelihood, unless they believe they will comfortably be amongst the administrative overclass themselves. Frankly, looking at the class positions that actual high-profile libertarians occupy, the many who are professors and beneficiaries of government largesse, what's that word? Largesse? Toward the education system, whether they are at state or private institutions, they might indeed be serving their self-interests, if not their advertised values correctly. Well, I'll say this. That is a fair criticism of a lot of libertarians who are, professors or in the Beltway or people like that. But right now, I'm just a libertarian podcaster who's talking to you. And the real hardcore libertarians, none of this applies to them.
Who cares? Make your money.
Yeah.
If it's a government job, go do it. I don't care. That's the game we play.
Look, there's a big, I know a lot of libertarians who have debated that before, like whether you should take a government job or not. I'm not even really going to get into that. Are there some libertarians who avoid certain issues to maintain their station in life? Sure. But that's also true for everybody of every ideological persuasion. If this America without a middle class is more politically stable than I think it will be, I suspect it will nonetheless face insuperable external challenges. So he's already had a given because he asserted that there won't be a middle class in America. There's America without a middle class. Now, our point of view...
So he's saying that we would have a world of equality. Isn't that what he's saying?
Right. Well, no, I think he's saying it's going to be poor and rich, so more inequality.
Well, at least all the poor people will be equal, and there's going to be more of them.
It's two-tiered equality.
So it's going to be mostly equality, because the rich class is going to be so small. It's going to be like a statistical margin error.
Right.
It's just going to be equality all around.
Well,
this guy's a genius.
I think that, first off, you're just asserting that there will be an America without a middle class, but you haven't actually made any argument about why the middle class is shrinking and what's causing this. Because truthfully, if there is, I would argue that the best way to grow the middle class would be to shrink the size of the state. And I can actually make a tangible argument for that, not just assert it. I could say, look at what the income tax does to middle class people. Look at what inflation does to middle class people. You want to look at the great enemy of the middle class is the state. Because what you have essentially in the state, and this is embodied perfectly in the Democratic Party, is you have a partnership between the super rich and the super poor against the middle. So the super rich get their bailouts, the super poor get their welfare. Guess who doesn't get shit but a tax bill? The middle class. So again,
we're taking our mouths and assholes at the same time.
That's right. Now, I've already won this argument because you're just making assertions and I'm actually making a point. I'm actually pointing to where the state fucks over the middle class. Okay? So I don't even know how much further I need to go.
Quit coming in our mouths.
That's what we're trying to say here. Quick, or at least ask. At least ask before you do it. All right. I suspect it will nonetheless face... Oh, no, I already read this. Okay, China won't have to fight a war with us. It will just outgrow us. Well, okay, if the concern is that China isn't going to fight a war with us, they're just going to outgrow us, then you would want to say we want to grow as fast as possible. So what is the best policy for economic growth?
Also, that if China's not outgrowing us. That's that idea that socialism works and centralized planning is working. Look at what happened to Russia. We never went to war with them. They collapsed. It's probably going to happen to China too. Look at their ghost cities with concrete and how all their central planning's going, and how is selling us steel at under market value really working out for you? Yeah. Is that really what's going to bring your country wealth over the long run? If we had to if we just were like a totally free market here and competing against China, we're going to beat them. I promise you.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And of course, this is also the point you made earlier. This is kind of like this geopolitical look on things that somebody else getting wealthy doesn't actually make you poorer. Right. So I don't even care if China grows and gets wealthy. But again, if your concern is that they're going to outgrow us, well, what is the policy that would lead to the fastest economic growth? Human history proves it's free market capitalism. There's no debate about that. Okay, there is a debate about that, but we're right. Okay. China will determine the strategic and economic environment in which we live. Okay. The cultural and religious environment will also be strongly influenced, if not determined, by the growth of Islam, particularly if Islam succeeds in dominating sub-Saharan Africa. So this is really that geopolitical world. Yes, if Islam takes over sub-Saharan Africa, how will I get up and go to work every day?
Also, here's the... I might be jumping the gun about what you're going to get into, but let's say the entire America decided to become Muslim, or let's say more and more Muslim people outpace the rest of us in terms of the kids that they have. So let's say just through the free market, you end up with more Muslims than Christians. I don't get why that's a problem. If more people choose through their own volition, hey, Muslim's the religion for me, so you're arguing that the state should come in and force people not to participate in a religion?
Right.
If a religion naturally outpaces another one or gets more people interested in that, great.
I mean, it seems to me, seeing as how this article was posted by a guy who complained about the Constitution going up in flames, it would seem that freedom of religion would be something you would support. And if your concern is that if we embrace libertarianism, we're going to go in this direction, well, what are you saying? You're like, well, I don't want to live around a bunch of Muslims. I want to live around Christians. Like, okay.
It's so racist as fuck. Yeah.
Well, it is, and that's fine. It's your right to be. Go live around Christians. Islam is not a race. Okay. I'm not sure that Hayek or Mises are the relevant texts for understanding any of this. Does a libertarian even care whether Islam displaces Christianity or China displaces America, as long as there are no tariffs on steel? All right. I don't know what to say to that. To reduce what libertarians care about. First off, libertarians are people. They can care about anything. Libertarianism doesn't just care about there not being tariffs on steel. Like, what I really care about is like ending wars, ending the Federal Reserve. Like there's lots of other issues that we care about. And personally, as a libertarian, yeah, I would care about Islam displacing Christianity, just because I think Christianity has had much more of a tradition of freedom in it than Islam has. But like you said, if people are freely choosing this, then then I guess they've kind of embraced the idea of freedom, so we would be fine. All right, you might not have freedom of religion or freedom of speech in the post-Western future, and those cheap consumer goods won't be so cheap anymore, but a libertarian will rest content knowing he fought to import as much foreign subsidized steel as possible. All right, so this is just a stupid and really dishonest statement. Even those Beltway libertarians or whoever you're talking about, the idea that they don't care about freedom of religion or freedom of speech, all they care about is foreign subsidized steel.
We care about freedom, cross-board.
Yes, yeah.
That's what we're interested in. What libertarian is going to tell you he's not for freedom of religion or freedom of speech? You're just making shit up. He's trying to make you play this game of picking in, like, no, it's just about freedom. Economic freedom and freedom from government.
Yeah, I don't even know. Okay, let's try to race through a little bit more of this because we're running over time. All right. This is why I consider libertarianism to be every bit as much a suicidal ideology as left liberalism. In some ways, it's even more so, as libertarians are more oblivious than left liberals to the consequences for themselves of hewing their to their ideology. It's just not an argument, so I don't even know how to respond to the sentence. It's like, no, we're not. Now we're even.
Let's just label the guy stupid and full of shit.
All right, let's just read a little bit more and then we'll wrap up. It seems to me that a healthy polity needs a middle class, and a country that is going to remain economically viable for as long as possible needs to have a commanding advantage in high-end manufacturing and producing goods that the rest of the world wants to buy. Okay, I think that a healthy society needs a middle class as well. The libertarian position has never been anti-middle class. You just asserted that libertarians don't care about the middle class, which has never been said by any libertarian once. So yeah, middle class is good. Upward mobility is good. You find the most of this in free societies. Okay. We still have some of these advantages right now, but we're forsaking them. Our country went from being underdeveloped at its founding to being a techno-industrial powerhouse in the 19th and 20th centuries, while employing a great many economic policies that libertarians don't like. We built the largest middle class the world has ever seen. All right, so look, we'll wrap there, but let me just take apart that last sentence, which was really, I think, the crux of this entire dumb argument. So you can say that we had all this success going from an underdeveloped country to a techno-industrial giant while implementing some policies that libertarians don't like. This is just a basic logical fallacy. This is the idea that correlation doesn't equal causation, right? So if you could say libertarians have this philosophy that a boat shouldn't have holes in the bottom of it. Like, you don't want to have holes because that'll let water in. And then you could say, well, we had this boat and it had holes in it and we were able to get from, across the sea. And then you could go, therefore, we need more holes in our boat. It's like, well, no. This doesn't, the fact that you were able to skate by with this policy, you haven't demonstrated at all that the hole in the boat actually helped you sail across this sea. In fact, the libertarian point is like, it's still a really good idea to not have those holes because we got lucky that time, or the hole wasn't big enough, or it wasn't in the right place, or whatever. I don't know much about boats. But the point is, you're not proving anything. So you can say we had policies that libertarians didn't like, and we built a huge middle class. But that's not actually an argument. The argument would be, here's this policy that libertarians don't like, and this is what's responsible for building the middle class. That would be what an argument would look like. But you haven't made that, so I don't even know what policy you're talking about or what to refer to. Okay, so what policies were there that we didn't like in the 19th and 20th century? Well, there was a lot of like cronyism in the railroad industry. I don't think that built the middle class. I think it just enriched some fucking people who bought off government. The New Deal, not the green one, the original New Deal, did nothing but prolong the Depression and had us burning up fucking food while people were hungry. So I don't know what you're talking about. The Great Society kept people trapped in poverty. So yes, despite all that, we had enough freedom in this country that we built up a middle class and a lot of success. But again, this stuff just isn't an argument. So it's just basically an article full of assertions that libertarians, you don't understand what's going to happen, or you don't know how to save the middle class. It's like, yeah, well, as the state grows bigger and bigger, you're seeing a lot of problems happen. And by the way, he might be right. A political crisis might come before an economic crisis. I don't know. Maybe we're in a political crisis right now. On the other hand, he might be wrong. And the economic crisis might hit harder and be a lot more serious. And I think there's a pretty good chance that's the case. All right, we're over time. We're going to wrap. See you on Friday with a brand new episode. Follow Robby Bernstein at Robby the Fire on Twitter. Run Your Mouth Podcast. Goodbye. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I believe it's right here. It's not actually here, but Brian's making it look like it's here. Also, you can check out some highlights, check out the full episodes. Again, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button, and yeah, have a good one.